Here's a Muppet News Flash. Middleweight champion Carl Boomer says that since he has defeated all challengers in the middleweight ranks, he will defend his title next week against himself. We go now to Boomer's training camp. Tell us, Carl, do you think this will be a tough fight?
Well, Muppet reporter, it will probably be one of my toughest, but I think I will be able to knock myself out in the 10th round. In the first few rounds, I will work on my body blows. Then I'll go for my head.
Carl's body may last 2 rounds, but I think his head has already gone down for the count.
Here's a Muppet News Flash. Arnold Stockman, a retired shoe salesman, recently had a most unusual experience, and we at Muppet News Central feel it is a story that should be shared with everyone. Here in his own words is Mr. Stockman to tell you of this most bizarre event.
Well, it was about a week ago when I was sitting at home watching television. It must have been about 9 o'clock. Suddenly the phone rang. Well, I picked it up, but there wasn't anybody there. So I hung up, and then I went back to watching the television. Darndest thing.
Whenever unusual events occur, you'll hear it first on Muppet News. Copenhagen, Denmark. Dr. Felix Ogelbaum says that after 30 years concentrated research, he has discovered the cure for the common cold. Our Muppet cameras are on the scene, and we'll speak with Dr. Ogelbaum about this great medical breakthrough. Dr. Ogelbaum.
Yeah, here I am, Felix Ogelbaum, in Copenhagen, Denmark.
Yes, Dr. Ogelbaum. Can you tell us about this cure?
Yeah, of course. It was right under our noses. Do you believe that? I'm so excited. First, you stay away from sick people. That's very important. Then you wrap your head in a number 10 size brown paper bag. And you pour honey over yourself. And you hold your breath for about an hour or so,
And this will cure the common cold?
Positively. And then again.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Dr. Ogelbaum. Remember, friends, whenever big news breaks, you certainly won't hear it here. Muppet News Flash. Billy Lee Boomer, a gas station attendant from Penny Box, Texas, reported a flying saucer landed at his station last night. Said Mr. Boomer.
Well, they didn't want no gas. They just wanted to use the restroom. Can't say to blame them. Said they'd traveled 83 million miles without a stop.
Muppet News Flash. Dateline, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Doctors in Milwaukee have reported a phenomenon never before witnessed in medical annals. Mr. Gus Klinger, a steam fitter, has over a 3-month period turned into a rug. Here is his wife, Mrs. Klinger, to explain what happened.
Well, it all started as a simple case of shag pile on the belly, but then gradually it spread until he is now a 9 by 12 carpet with fringe. I am just going to have to sue for divorce, that's all.
Oh, why is that, Mrs. Klinger?
Because he does not match the drapes.
Muppet News Flash. Dateline, Boston, Massachusetts. Mrs. Gretchen Powers of that city is trying to enter the Guinness Book of Records by completing the world's longest sentence. She began talking 6 weeks ago, and neighbors say she hasn't stopped since. Our Muppet cameras are in her home now. Mrs. Powers.
And the dog fell over the nose of the tree, went into the spaghetti factory, while 6 million men marched in their foghorns under a double-decker bus whose onion soup spoke of undermining
Mrs. Powers,
the
if we could interrupt
country.
for a moment.
But for the grace of the noodle pie, go I, said the spokesman for the group who wore turtleneck convertible as the rain fell for the first time.
This sentence you're
since the
saying
bucket
is
was
long,
well
but I'm
over
missing
side
the point of
building
it.
was covered in what was said not the fault of the blueberry bush, but instead when the investigators arrived at the corset factory.
Mrs. Powers' husband, Carl, said it makes about as much sense as anything she said. He said this from his home at the Clinging Vine Home for the Crazed.
In the third row of the balcony, because that is the way it is. You cannot...
Muppet News Flash. Dateline, Mobile, Alabama. Mrs. Beverly Shepard has made aviation history in this southern city. Last week, Mrs. Shepard made a pair of wings, strapped them to her body, and flew to Dallas, Texas. Here she is direct from Texas to tell us the details.
Gosh, am I really on TV?
Yes, Mrs. Shepard, you are. Now, can you tell us the details of this astounding accomplishment?
What was so astounding? It was so easy. I just made my wings out of aluminum, and I covered them with chicken feathers, and then I fitted them with straps for my arms.
Yes, go on.
Then I went out to the airport and boarded a plane for Dallas. What's the big deal?
I'm sure I have no idea. Here's a Muppet News Flash. Dateline, Dallas, Texas. Mrs. Billy Lee Bonkers of that city recently entered the Guinness Book of Records by establishing the World Jumping in Place record. Mrs. Bonkers began jumping in place 3 months ago and so far has jumped 652,000 times.
652,001.
Mrs. Bonkers.
652,002.
Mrs. Bonkers, do you need any special incentive to keep you going?
Oh, my, no. I have all the incentive that I need.
How's that?
I am standing on a hot plate. 652,003.
Truly a courageous and inspiring story. Where do we get these nuts? Muppet News Flash. Dateline, London. Mrs. Lola Thomas of that city has just finished eating an entire diesel tractor. Tell me, Mrs. Thomas, why did you do such a thing?
Well, the doctor told me I had an iron deficiency, you see. So I started on a couple of doorknobs and the occasional typewriter. But there's nothing really quite like a good bit of diesel tractor with your chips and peas, is there?
What an extraordinary feat. I mean, how was it done?
Oh, a medium rare or thereabouts.
Is this lady making a fool of me?
She didn't make a fool of him.
No, he managed it all by himself.